yesterday, the writs were officially returned by the Electoral Commission, with all results now in, making tomorrow the 1 month mark on since polling day and the advent of the Albanese government. Now, I suspect the first few polls will be good for the new government. They nearly always are. And the Canberra class is certainly giving the PM the usual honeymoon. But out in the real world, reality is well and truly hitting home. The Prime Minister and his top ministers, well, they've been overseas for the most part, being feted by their global counterparts, as new leaders invariably are. But here at home, the price of everything seems to be going up, except the value of our homes, which will now almost certainly start to stagnate or even go down as interest rates start to march back up, somewhere around 5%, they say, or perhaps more. The big feature of the government's opening weeks has been the power crisis, brought on by a cold snap, the high price of gas, and outages in Australia's ageing coal-fired power stations. As the regulator handed back the sector to the market, the government was patting itself on the back today for getting through it, so far it seems, without serious blackouts, although some smelters were told to shut down and reassuring everyone that there's nothing to see here. But the fact that the electricity market had to be suspended in the first place shows just how fragile our grid has become. And unlike in Europe, where the same gas drought, exacerbated of course by Russian counter-sanctions, has caused coal-fired power generation to be pulled out of mothballs, here it's still full steam ahead for even more renewables. Britain, Germany, the Netherlands and Austria, all of them once zealots for net zero, have pressed a climate change pause as they're mugged by the reality that wind and solar works only some of the time and they need gas firming to keep the lights on. But our new government insists that the answer to intermittency problems is even more intermittent power. And it's going to now make it legislated, this 43% cut by 2030, a big priority, its first priority indeed, when the Parliament resumes late next month. But with prices set to soar, I wonder how much more we'll hear about the government's election pledge to cut our power bills by $275 a year by 2025. You know the answer. It's just not going to happen. During the campaign, no one in either of the major parties wanted to be sceptical about net zero and the supposed need for even more climate action. But these chickens will soon come home to roost here as they have in Europe. I just hope that it doesn't take the lights going out for Australians to wake up. But what about the PM's reassurance that all that needed to change was the person in the lodge? If his Green allies are right, we don't just need a constitutionally entrenched Indigenous voice to the Parliament, but we need to change the flag and change to a republic too. And then there's the prospect of an even easier time for so-called asylum seekers that so far prompted 4 new boats from Sri Lanka. So much for safe change. Meanwhile, we haven't heard much from the new opposition. Fair enough, as the opposition regroups, but with an ominous strategic outlook and people feeling poorer, there'll be plenty of opportunities if the Liberals hold their nerve. The next few months will be a test of mettle for Peter Dutton and his team. Now, they could copy many of these state Liberal oppositions and basically go along as a weak echo of Labor. That's hardly a model for anything but being permanently left in opposition. Or they could become, or go back to being, as Liberals, the voice of the quiet Australians, who say no to dividing our country by race, no to trashing our symbols, and no to governments spending money they don't have on things we don't need. Now, we're a month into this new government. We are, aren't we? Where it was all very predictable, in a bit of trouble, facing a few challenges.